distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the 2021 IRENA Legislators Forum. The theme this year is parliamentary actions to scale up renewable investments, renewable energy as an enabler of services. Let me at the beginning thank His Excellency, the Director General of IRENA and his team for organizing this forum, but for also keeping us connected during this crisis. A number of us have had the privilege to be on several platforms with him and his team, making the case for renewable energy around the world. When we met last year, we had no clue that COVID-19 will disrupt the world so much. We had no idea that a small virus will disrupt our lives and in fact reshape how we relate with each other, how we work, and how our economies will produce goods and services. It is a crisis, but it also presents an opportunity for us to think about a number of issues and to think about how we will create a better world, how we will build back better and create a more inclusive, just, and fair post-COVID global society. We parliamentarians had to approve emergency response regulations. We had to approve lockdowns that affected civil liberties of our peoples. We parliamentarians also had to take decisions that affected economic processes, that is production, marketing, and trading activities. We parliamentarians also had to approve stimulus packages to ensure that we mitigated the negative effects of this pandemic and the crisis that accompanied it. So it was very clear that we, the people's representatives, played a crucial role in how countries handle the crisis. More importantly, and why this forum is relevant, we parliamentarians have an opportunity to create a better world, to ensure that our economies, in fact, will be greener, will be more just, will also accelerate energy transitions in our economies and around the world. We hope that this forum creates an opportunity for us to share those experiences as to the actions we've taken or plan to take to, in fact, move the energy transition processes within our economies. And more importantly, we recognized during this crisis that all the solutions that are needed to deal with the crisis, whether it's the health solutions or the economic rebuilding solutions, all of them require energy services, affordable, reliable energy services to make them effective. Therefore, in our discussions today, we hope for the time we're going to spend together, we'll all reflect collectively as to how we can, in fact, ensure that the new vaccines that we have seen to deal with the crisis will be delivered in time to all those who need it, including the rich and the poor. In order to do that, we know already that energy solutions are central for the distribution and safe delivery and storage of these vaccines and other solutions. So with that, I'm very grateful that we're all able to meet and that IRENA has again maintained our platform to share these valuable ideas. I want to take the opportunity then to inform you that in fact we have two sessions. Our first session will look at renewable energy as an enabler to build back better after COVID-19. Our second session will be looking at accelerating the energy transition by scaling up investments for renewables. To kick us off, it is my honor and privilege to invite His Excellency Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, to give his welcoming remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kande. Thank you, my friend. And thanks for accepting to moderate this session. Your Excellencies, Martin Kunjang, Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union, Your Excellencies, Zak Gobash, Speaker of the Federal National Council of the United Arab Emirates, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 6th edition of the IRENA Legislator Forum. At the outset, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guests and participants. We have over 170 participants today from 65 countries. I naturally also wish again to welcome our moderator, Dr. Candela Junquela, member of the Parliament of Sierra Leone and former Director General of UNIDO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All. Thank you all for joining us. This audience is well aware of the importance of energy and its impact on economic, social, and environmental priorities. Our discussion today will focus on how we can use the power of the parliamentarians to scale up investments and take advantage of the immense opportunity that renewable energy offers in realizing these priorities. As legislators, you work directly with the communities, and so you have the first-hand understanding of the need for reliable, adequate, and affordable energy services. It is not about technologies, but also immense benefit the renewable-based energy system bring. 80% of countries today are energy importers, but all countries have some indigenous renewable potential to harness. The key is to find the right avenues to take advantage of these potentials for sustainable energy service that are secure, bring local job, stimulate economy, and improve human welfare. And you know that investment is a crucial piece of the puzzle and often the main barrier to taking the full advantage of these potentials. It is for this reason that IRENA is prioritizing investment and project facilitation services. Last year, we established the Climate Investment Platform to support countries with their energy transition together with UNDP and Sea4All, and in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. Despite the current circumstances, we made great progress. In partnership with bilateral, multilateral, and private sector partners, we can support countries to systematically and currently create a pipeline of investor-ready and scalable projects. In closing, I wish to emphasize that my priority is to ensure IRENA is truly responsive to the needs of our members, and also one step ahead of the last development to anticipate next steps. It's my firm belief that only with this approach we can ensure that our work will remain relevant as you strive to accelerate the energy transition and realize health, welfare, and economic benefit for all of your constituents. As we proceed with our discussion today, I invite you to share your insight and experience in mobilizing investment for a green recovery, and how you think IRENA can best support you in this regard. I look forward to hearing your views, and I'm confident that together we can translate our vision of an inclusive, resilient, and just energy system into reality for your constituents, nations, and the world. Thank you very much. Back to you, Candela.
Thank you, Director General. We now invite Honorable Martin Shugon, Secretary General, Interparliamentary Union, to give his remarks.
Thank you very much, Candy. It's a pleasure to see you again, and Happy New Year. Your Excellency, the Speaker of the Federal National Council of United Arab Emirates, dear colleague Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, distinguished members of Parliament, and there are many of you I see on this forum today, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to represent the Interparliamentary Union at this very important meeting today, which is taking place in a virtual format on account of the circumstances brought about by the COVID-19 virus. Let me thank my colleague, Director General La Camera of IRENA, for inviting me to take part in this meeting and for hosting it, making sure that parliamentarians continue to be part of the discussions taking place in the context of IRENA. Indeed, this year's forum is incredibly timely as countries around the globe are grappling with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had far-reaching social and economic consequences. At the same time, countries must still continue to work towards internationally agreed climate and development targets outlined in Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement. Universal access to sustainable and affordable clean energy is a critical element for both sustainable development and tackling the climate crisis. However, achieving a clean energy transition requires increased political will and a substantial reallocation of resources from highly polluting energy sources such as fossil fuels towards renewable energy. Such a transition requires a considerable effort from a number of stakeholders, including legislators. I therefore welcome the presence of high numbers of parliamentarians in this forum today. As countries are now resetting their priorities and reallocating resources to deal with COVID-19, there is an urgent need for recovery strategies that are aligned with sustainable development pathways that ensure human and environmental well-being. Through their legislative, budgetary, oversight, and representation functions, parliaments are in a unique position to ensure that responses to the pandemic scale up investments in renewable energy and facilitate a global energy transition. Going back to business as usual is not an option if we are serious about meeting climate and development objectives. The IPU has made supporting parliaments and parliamentarians in their efforts to achieve sustainable development and take climate action, including clean energy, a priority. The IPU supports bilateral, regional, and international parliament engagement to facilitate the sharing of good practices and lessons learned on addressing climate and development challenges. Recently, the IPU and the United Nations Environment Programme have been working together to identify key approaches that parliamentarians may wish to consider in promoting a sustainable and green recovery to COVID-19 pandemic. These approaches are outlined in a recently released joint policy note for parliamentarians. The policy note outlines a number of green economy approaches, including in relation to clean energy and green jobs, and proposes parliamentary actions within each of these areas. For example, parliamentarians can prioritize clean energy in COVID-19 recovery packages to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Parliamentarians have the opportunity to advance laws that contribute to both short and long-term energy policies that promote a shift to renewable energy, including by prioritizing budget allocations for low-carbon initiatives. This policy note also highlights how parliamentarians can introduce recovery laws that incentivize green investment and create employment in the renewable energy sectors. A shift to a greener economy, particularly through scaling up investments in renewable energy, has the potential to create millions of new jobs. The recovery process from this pandemic is a great challenge, but it also provides a unique opportunity to follow more just and sustainable pathways and accelerate the clean energy transition. This Legislators Forum provides an important platform for critical discussion among parliamentarians on key parliamentary actions for making the clean energy transition a reality, as well as for sharing insights on the challenges and opportunities parliamentarians face in scaling up renewable energy investments in their respective countries. I look forward to participating in the important discussions that will take place today and wish you a successful event. But let me underscore, and I was heartened by what my colleague Francesco said about the need to help parliaments take concrete action in response to the energy challenges that we're facing today. So the discussions taking place today should be a step in the right direction, but should not be the end point. We would like to see the discussions that are taking place today followed up on by parliaments with the support of partners such as IRENA, the IPO and the World Bank. And I can stand committed to working with my colleague of IRENA to see what it is that we can do to support parliaments in our common endeavor to achieve a more sustainable planet for all. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Honorable Shugang, Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union. We now will hear a statement from His Excellency Honorable Sakir Gobash, Speaker, Federal National Council, United Arab Emirates. Over to you, sir.
أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني اليوم التواصل معكم في الدورة السادسة من منتدى مشرعي سياسات الطاقة المتجددة 2021 ضمن أعمال الجمعية العمومية 11 للوكالة الدولية للطاقة المتجددة أيرينا. وفي البداية أود الإشادة بجهود المنتدى لقدرته على تحفيز التعاون المشترك وحشد الجهود البرلمانية لتوفير البيئة القانونية لمشاريع الطاقة المتجددة وضمان استدامتها. وكلنا يعلم أن عام 2020 كان مليئا بالتحديات التي خلفتها الظروف الاستثنائية لجائحة فيروس كورونا المستجد كوفيد-19. لذلك فإنه يتوجب علينا اليوم أكثر من أي وقت مضى أن نعمل بشكل جماعي لتحقيق أجندة خطة التنمية المستدامة 2030، وهذا من شأنه أن يلقي مسؤولية إضافية على المشرعين في مواجهة تحديات عالم ما بعد كوفيد-19 لكي يكون لهم دورهم الفعال في معالجة قضايا تغير المناخ والأمن الغذائي، بالإضافة إلى تحسين الاستجابة للاحتياجات الإنسانية المتعددة من خدمات وفرص صحية وغذائية، وتوظيف التكنولوجيا والابتكار لإيجاد حلول أكثر استدامة. الحضور الكرام، إنه يشرفني في هذا المقام التأكيد على أن دولة الإمارات مستمرة في تعزيز التنمية المستدامة وفي ضمان تحقيق تحول إيجابي في قطاع الطاقة محليا وإقليميا وعالميا. ولعل ما يؤكد ذلك على المستوى المحلي والإقليمي ما حققته دولة الإمارات من إنجازات متعددة، منها أولاً أنها حققت السبق في أن تكون أول دولة عربية تبدأ في تشغيل محطة للطاقة النووية السلمية، وهو إنجاز جاء تتويجاً للتكامل بين جهود تنظيمية وتشريعية متنوعة لغايات ضمان استدامة المحافظة على البيئة ولمواجهة تحديات الطاقة والتغير المناخي في إطار استراتيجية الإمارات للطاقة 2050 ومئوية الإمارات 2071. ثانياً، عملت الدولة بشكل فعال نحو الاستفادة من كافة إمكانات الموارد الشمسية من خلال مشاريع عديدة، منها مشروع مجمع الشيخ محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم للطاقة الشمسية، ومشروع مجمع نور أبو ظبي، كما حرصت أيضاً على الاتجاه نحو خفض تكاليف توليد الكهرباء المرتبطة بالطاقة المتجددة، حيث حققت في مجال هذا التخفيض نتائج غير مسبوقة دولياً. ثالثاً، على النطاق العالمي تتواصل محاولات الدولة لحشد المجتمع الدولي وتحفيز التعاون المشترك انطلاقاً من دورها المحوري ومكانتها المهمة في مجالات الاستدامة والطاقة المتجددة. ويشهد على ذلك ما قامت به في 29 ديسمبر الماضي من تسليم تعهداتها والتزاماتها الوطنية في اتفاقية باريس للتغير المناخي بخفض انبعاثات الكربون بنسبة الربع قبل عام 2030. كل ذلك يؤكد على أولوية قضية التغير المناخي لدى الدولة ولدى قيادتها الرشيدة لمنع أو للإقلال من أي تهديد أو أي خطر يمكن أن يحدث في العقود القادمة إذا لم تأخذ هذه القضية حقها من الاهتمام ومن المعالجة. الحضور الكرام، من منطلق ما أكدنا عليه من عزم دولة الإمارات وتصميمها على مواصلة دورها المحوري فيما يخدم التنمية المستدامة للطاقة، فإن المجلس الوطني الاتحادي بوصفه السلطة التشريعية في الدولة يتفهم تماماً الدور المنوط به في تناول تشريعات الاستثمار في حلول الطاقة المتجددة والنظيفة على النحو الذي تستلزمه تلك التشريعات من عمق في الدراسة وشمولية في الرؤية والبحث ودقة وسرعة في الإنجاز، كما أن المجلس حريص أيضاً على تبني التوصيات الداعمة لهذه التنمية. كل ذلك يتزامن مع استثمار المجلس لدوره في الدبلوماسية البرلمانية في هذا الشأن، فمن خلال تعاونه مع مختلف الاتحادات البرلمانية الإقليمية والدولية يمهد الطريق لضمان وصول مصادر الطاقة المستدامة والمتجددة لأكبر عدد من البشر على كوكب الأرض. الحضور الكرام، في الختام، وإذ نشكر كل الشكر القائمين على تنظيم هذا المنتدى، فإنني أود التأكيد على أنه بعون الله وتوفيقه وبثقتنا في تعاوننا وتكاملنا جميعا مع العمل الجاد والمتواصل سوف نحقق نتائج إيجابية ومؤثرة تسهم في تعزيز نشر تقنيات الطاقة المتجددة وإيجاد حلول لزيادة الاستثمارات في مجال تلك الطاقة، وفي التمكين للخدمات التي تضمن التنمية المستدامة للمجتمعات الإنسانية كلها. والله الموفق والمستعان، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much, Honorable Kobash, Speaker, Federal National Council, United Arab Emirates. On behalf of our colleagues and guests in this forum, we want to extend our gratitude to the government and people of the UAE for continuing to host these dialogues and for setting good examples as to what could happen in terms of sustainable energy investments. We want to thank our keynote speakers for these introductory remarks. I'm sure they've given us food for thought. With this, we now move on to our panel discussions. And we've set up a very good panel for you. The bios were distributed, and because again we're doing everything digital, I will not spend time on the biographies. But to kick off our panel discussion, I would now like to invite Rabia Farouki, Director, Knowledge, Finance and Policy Center of IRENA, for her presentation. Over to you, Rabia.
Thank you very much, Yomkela. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to set the scene for this important discussion on the role of renewables in the green recovery and the actions that are needed to rebuild better in the context of the energy transition. As I think we all know now that the COVID pandemic has even more clearly unveiled the limitation of the current energy system, supporting the evidence that the global energy transition is not only possible, but also unavoidable. At a time of unprecedented recovery and stimulus plans, policymakers, as many of you have suggested already before me, have a unique opportunity to invest in a climate-safe future by aligning short-term investments and policies for recovery from the crisis with long-term needs for decarbonized economies, increasing investors' confidence as a result, and attracting additional funding in the sector. IRENA's transforming energy scenario, as laid out in IRENA's flagship report, Global Renewables Outlook, proposes an ambitious pathway for the energy transition to 2030-2050, reflecting the goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, but also looking at its impact. In fact, it shows that the annual energy-related CO2 emissions would need to decrease by 70% below today's level by 2050, and renewables would need to increase from around 14% of total primary energy supply today to 28% in 2030 and then 65% in 2050. Now, focusing only on 2030, total investments for the energy transition would need to reach about $49 trillion, about $4.5 trillion annually, not only in renewables, but in the broader energy system, including energy efficiency, infrastructure, etc. This would generate an additional 19 million jobs in renewables, energy efficiency, and energy system flexibility over the next decade, and boost GDP by an additional 1.3% per year compared to a business as usual pathway. As you can see in the graph, all regions in the world that we have analyzed stand to gain from the transition, with some, of course, faring better than others, depending on country condition, resources, policies introduced, and ambition, of course. Now, most importantly, investing in the transition would help kickstart the global economy already in the very short run and generate much needed employment. IRENA analysis that is laid out in the post-COVID report, which we published last spring, shows that the investment of $2 trillion annually over the next 3 years, 2021-2023, would boost GDP by an additional 1% and generate an additional 5.5 million jobs, energy transition-related jobs, compared to the business as usual pathway. To attract the investments needed in the short run and the longer term, national, subnational targets are essential. And we have started to see very ambitious targets being set. Over a dozen countries and the European Union have passed or proposed laws around net zero emissions and really have earmarked significant financial resources to green recovery plans that are centered around renewables. Net zero targets are not immediately possible for all economies, but the ambitions expressed in NDCs, for example, which are currently very dominated by power sector targets, must be raised for all sectors. The energy transition also requires leveling the playing field with fossil fuels and phasing out the hundreds of billions of dollars currently being spent in fossil fuel subsidies to redirect them towards the energy transition is absolutely key. In fact, financial markets and investors such as BlackRock, Swedish AP, etc., are already shifting their attention towards sustainable assets, including renewables. In addition, major oil and gas companies like BP, Shell, Total, etc., are revising their strategies to reduce their oil and gas assets in favor of renewables. Where possible, policymakers should also consider adjusting and implementing fiscal policies, such as carbon pricing, to internalize negative impact of fossil fuels. Of course, very careful attention need of broader social and equity issues is necessary, particularly for low-income populations for whom energy constitutes a large share of household expenditures and whose budgets do not leave many options. Raising ambition and public intervention are just part of the policies for that are needed for the energy transition. We also need effective deployment and integration policies and regulations such as renewables auction, feed-in tariffs and premiums, etc., to attract investment. We need a holistic policy framework where deployment policies go hand in hand with energy system integration measures and broader enabling policies. Important, of course, is also to establish the ecosystem that can maximize the benefits by allowing for broader systemic changes, including education and training, industrial policies, support for R&D, collaboration between industry and research institutions, etc. And finally, we also need to minimize the socio-economic cost of transitioning away from fossil fuels. This requires a set of labor market and social protection policies that support workers from industries that are rendered obsolete. An appropriate ecosystem is also needed for energy access to support livelihood. And very briefly, it should include access to finance, de-risking tools, conducive ownership models, efficient technologies that really cater to the specific needs, awareness regarding available solutions and skills to distribute, install, and maintain those technologies, access to new or existing markets to sell products, and finally, integrated resource planning as part of national level policies and targets. In conclusion, policies for renewables in the energy transition should not be considered in isolation. They should be considered as part of the broader socioeconomic structures upon which the energy system is built and with which it interacts. As a result, a systemic approach is required in the energy sector, but also in the underlying socioeconomic systems that we have built until now and that have proven not to be vulnerable and fragile. So as the world is responding to this unprecedented health crisis, we're once again reminded of the critical role affordable and reliable energy plays across crucial sectors such as health. And we see practical examples of how meeting SDG 7 contributes directly or indirectly to nearly all other SDGs. So as we strive to recover from the pandemic and build a more inclusive and sustainable economy, we must be conscious of the interconnected nature of our energy system. The complete transformation of the energy system will have ripple effects across sectors, and a holistic approach is imperative to ensure a smooth transition that maximizes socioeconomic benefits and advances both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the climate agenda. So now is the best time to act. The green stimulus packages in response to the pandemic are of key opportunity to leverage on the socioeconomic benefits of the energy transition and overcome the current economic downturn. So we count on all of you legislators to support the transition through the influence that you have. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rabia, for kicking off. A lot of information to digest. And now I would like to turn to our colleague, Gianni Cianetta, Chair, Global Solar Council, for an introductory presentation as well. Over to you, Gianni.
Thank you very much. There is a small misunderstanding. Jenny Kenneth was the former chairman of the Global Solar Council. I am Jose Donoso, the actual chairman of the Global Solar Council.
Sorry, Jose.
But in any case, it's for me a great honor to have the possibility to address on behalf of the Global Solar Council and personally so prestigious audience, and to have this possibility to bring the voice of the industrial solar sector to hear. Thank you very much to IRENA for the invitation, and thank you very much to IRENA too for his great job that they are doing to spread the renewable energies, and in particular the PV in the world. And the Global Solar Council is the voice of the world solar energy industry. We are a non-profit body representing national, regional, and international associations, as well as within sector corporation. Our vision is solar energy is the leading solution to the world energy needs. Our mission is to promote the rapid adoption of solar energy globally through market development, partnership, and education. We are develop the activities that in the Global Solar Council we develop is we work as a think tank, developing actionable policy recommendation for intergovernmental organizations, and two for parliamentary. We'll be very happy to cooperate with the Interparliamentary Union or other parliaments in the world to transmit our experience of our companies, our association, to work in many countries from 5 continents, the experience in the development of the energy policy. The policy recommendation are keys for develop in a correct way the PV and the renewable energy, and we have a experience already in the whole world. We help to open new markets and grow in existing markets, building partnership with key intergovernmental organizations and international institutions as IRENA. We would like to expand the local capacity and promoting standards, best practice, quality initiative, and sustainability that are key for the right development of PV. We have association and corporations of the 5 continents in the world, and we continue growing. And the spirit is to have all the mayors, all the association, the national association represented in our Global Solar Council. In relation to pandemic, our sector, in general terms, our sector show a big resilience in relation with the pandemic, but it does not mean that it was not affected. We organized one test, we addressed one test to more of 500 corporates in the world. And the answer of this question was that the 28% of the companies were not affected by the pandemic. His order continued going on. But the 71% were affected. 60 have seen orders fall by up to half. 30% have seen orders fall by between 50 and 90%, and then 10% have seen orders virtually wiped out with more than 90%. Then we developed some recommendation to the governments to try to help the sector, to try to avoid this impact. Because PV is not only one way, it's clean and cheap to produce electricity. It's one way of to produce economic growing. We, in this economical aspect of the pandemic, is the bad situation of the economy in both of the countries. We were a way to create employment with investment in a structural investment that will allow in the future to the countries not only to have a clean energy, to have a cheap energy, how remark the previous speakers. And that is quite important, and is one way to go ahead, that must be prioritized to go ahead of this crisis. For that, we ask for some specific measure as tax relief for solar PV installation, particularly for self-consumption, and tax credits for companies. Dedicated state financing on non-refundable loans and aid, and actions, very important, is to reduce bureaucracy through digitalization and cut administrative burdens and easy financial regulation. We need to go to work very quickly. And sometimes now the bureaucracy will produce the large timings for projects. And this is particularly a problem in this moment that we have a demand shock in our economies. We need investment, and we have this investment that came from the private sector in most of the countries that can be really very quickly. But bureaucracy produces that we need several years before to concrete this investment. And this is very bad for climate change, but it's very bad for the economy of the countries in this moment. Then it will be very necessary that every country will make the audits in his bureaucratic process. That does not mean to do more light, even but more rationals in the way to an important shortage between the timing that the people will decide to go ahead with investment and the timing when this investment is made. Every month of delay is 1 month with more CO2 emission and is 1 month or more people unemployed. Next, please. We can see here that source is lesser. How in this moment PV is the cheapest way to produce electricity. But if these prices of 40, we are watching that in the tenders, the price arrived to prices half of these $40. It's not possible. It's very difficult to compete with the prices of PV in the countries where there is a good resource. Yes, please. Then we see how are the different scenarios. And I would like to remark that it's business as usual now is to invest in PV. It's not to invest in technologies that have no future. Business as usual now is to invest in PV and to continue growing PV in the world. Next, please. But beyond this immediate positive impact on climate environment, the global ripple effect PVs will bring both benefits in terms of jobs and livelihoods, access to energy and education, and this work. We are, repeat, the cheapest and cleanest source of energy, and then it's worth to do more effort to accelerate the introduction of PV in all the countries. Next, please. Then, to finalize, what are our recommendations? Governments must adopt long-term strategies and plans to promote synergies with other sectors, but particularly long-term strategies for PV. And that is key, particularly for the countries that wanted to develop his own PV industrial sector, because the industrial sector needs more than subsidies, more than loans, needs certainty. Legal certainty for the project and certainty in the programs in development programs. If not, will be difficult to convince the people to invest in factories if they don't have a vision, a long-term vision of the market that allow them to invest in factories, to invest in R&D, and all these structural investment. That is a key. The second line is reduce bureaucracy, cut administrative burdens, and ease financial regulation. We need to redesign the energy market, allow renewables to play in a level field. It's time to promote carbon pricing mechanism at global level. We need to invest in research and development, innovative technologies, and in their industrial policies. Capacity building is one of the key solutions for a just transition to ensure no one is left behind. And we offer to the experience of our association to help the countries to develop this capacity building. We cannot promote sustainability without considering inclusion. Being green is a lifestyle, and we are the good guys, and we try to do the things in the best way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose Donoso, the new chair of the Global Solar Council. Thank you very much for those very concrete areas where you believe companies, solar companies, and renewable energy companies can be assisted. I was really taken aback when you mentioned that 70% of your membership companies were affected by COVID, and some of the measures you've called for, tax relief, reducing bureaucracy and long-term certainty, I am sure the MPs have taken note of. Madam Rabia pushed us MPs to be more ambitious. She encouraged us also to maximize socioeconomic benefits of renewables across the economies, while also minimizing the socioeconomic costs of the transition and adjustments to a greener future. She emphasized a lot having systemic approaches, not single initiatives, but looking at the impact across the economies of how jobs can be created and subsidies rationalized and the benefits for economic growth in investing in renewables. I didn't want to summarize, but just to highlight some of the key messages. We have a good panel that will go deeper into these issues now. And it is my pleasure then for some reactions and some suggestions to call. I'll go according to the list that is in front of me, that is in the program, in that order. It is my pleasure then to invite Honorable Lauren B. Ligardia, Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives of the Philippines. I will encourage my colleagues to be brief so that we can able to get more of our participants to make some statements. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening from the Philippines. I am pleased to join you in this important legislative forum of the International Renewable Energy Agency in partnership with the Global Renewable Congress. With the pandemic, we've come to realize that our world is not that advanced and resilient as we thought it to be. Our social and economic systems are fragile. However highly interconnected, we are only as strong as the most vulnerable among us. The best way forward is to heed science and to take decisive actions for our collective recovery that also secures a cleaner, safer, and more resilient world for all of us. The latest science conveys that for the world community to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius, the threshold that was stated in the Paris Agreement, carbon emissions should fall by 45% by 2030 from 2010 levels and should reach a net zero by 2050. The global energy transition amid the pandemic is therefore an imperative. Pursuing the 1.5 Paris goal is a matter of survival. Failure means enormous and lingering socio-economic consequences, many more times than this present pandemic, about $600 trillion in loss and damage by the end of the century. The Philippines, a highly climate vulnerable archipelagic country with only 0.3% share in the global greenhouse gas emissions, recognizes the opportunities for a sustainable and inclusive recovery towards a low carbon development path. And I believe the Philippines already has the fundamental laws and policies in place, while more policy reforms are underway. Way back in 2008, I co-authored a Renewable Energy Act that offers a wide range of incentives to spur growth within the RE sector. And in 2019, we passed the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Law, which I co-authored. We also imposed higher taxes on coal, which for decades had enjoyed minimal taxes at only 10 pesos or 20 US centavos per metric ton, we were able to increase the taxes to 50, 100, and 150 pesos for the next 3 years. Our national policy review on energy identified key strategies and policy reforms on integrated energy system planning, renewable energy development, energy efficiency, and conventional electricity generation in line with the country's pursuit of energy security, affordability, and sustainability. It recommends the establishment of decentralized RE plans to provide access to 5% of households in the Philippines that do not have electricity connection. The moratorium of the Philippines Department of Energy on endorsements for coal power plants and their support to allow 100% foreign ownership on geothermal projects is a game changer, a concrete step to advance rapidly the deployment of renewable energy and reduce the country's dependence on coal for energy transition. The challenge for us now is to ensure that these policies translate into concrete action and desired outcomes, including enabling RE technologies to emerge from the current crisis with renewed momentum. We must view the challenges of the pandemic with a lens of climate change adaptation and mitigation to ensure that our societies, our economies rebound with development opportunities from the pursuit of climate resilience and sustainability.
Mira, soy José Donoso, que
drive national policy development and reform for enabling sustainable energy transition, vital economic recovery strategy.
Just to ask our colleagues to mute their mic if they're not on the floor. Go ahead, madam.
That is why I've pushed for a provision in the economic stimulus and recovery bill for my country that ensures the construction of climate resilient and climate smart infrastructure, such as flexible smart power grids that can accommodate renewable energy sources, sustainable transport systems, and the integration of green infrastructure in the government's national expenditure program. Entrusted with the power of the purse, we parliamentarians must ensure that the annual national budget sustains programs that advance and accelerate low carbon development. With its vast experience and global exposure, IRENA is in a unique position to support parliamentarians to craft responsive and fit for purpose policies on sustainable renewable energy. Let us continue to work together. Let us sustain this convergence and conversation among world parliamentarians. Let us all seize today's opportunity to transform our world and to secure a better and brighter future for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Yorgos Lokedis, Member of Parliament from Cyprus. Honorable Member, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It is a great honor and pleasure to address this forum. The exchange of best practices and expertise among all relevant stakeholders further boosts our efforts to place renewables at the core of our recovery process amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Meeting the EU's ambitious climate objectives to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 compared to the 1990 levels, and to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 requires full transformation of the global energy system, the transition from linear to circular economic models, and the redirection towards clean technologies and energy efficient infrastructure. Allow me to say a few words about Cyprus's efforts to meet its national targets related to climate and energy, in line, of course, with its relevant EU and international commitments. Being a small, isolated energy market without any electricity interconnection with other countries, and with a high dependency on fossil fuels for power generation, the Republic of Cyprus has set as its strategic priorities the country's energy supply, the transition to clean energy based on the EU Green Deal objectives, the creation of a competitive energy market, and the optimal utilization of domestic renewable energy sources. Cyprus has reached the 13% of renewable energy at the final energy consumption from renewables from 2020 and aims at increasing their share from 30.9% to 22.9% in the period from 2021 until 2030. Yet, according to recent Eurostat data, Cyprus has the lowest share of renewable energy in transport fuel consumption in the EU. Provided that the liberalization of the Cyprus electricity market, which is expected to take place in early 2022, is conducted properly, it could potentially lead to cheaper and cleaner energy. At the same time, Cyprus plans to import liquefied natural gas, LNG, for power generation by 2022, over a 20 to 30-year period to reduce carbon emissions, in line with EU targets, and until it can exploit its own natural gas, that's this being the cleanest fossil fuel. The Republic of Cyprus has launched the construction of a LNG terminal at Vasilikos Bay to improve the country's security of energy supply and diversification of imported energy sources and fuels. The East Med pipeline, as well as the Euro-Asia and Euro-Africa interconnectors, which are EU projects of common interest, in addition to their significance regarding Cyprus' geopolitical role, will end the energy isolation of the country and will enhance its capacity to produce and transmit electricity from renewables. It is worth mentioning that Cyprus holds a pioneering position worldwide in the installation of M2 solar connectors per inhabitant. There are also plans to install photovoltaic systems for low-income households and for those in mountain regions, as well as for all public schools, which will be renovated to increase their energy efficiency and to harness the optimal potential of solar power. I would like to highlight that we will be able to achieve our targets, provided that all these ambitious projects are indeed implemented and in due time, and they do not remain empty words. As an EU member state, we have quantitative targets to meet on renewable energy production. This is perfectly legitimate, but their development must follow European and national environmental impact legislation, ensuring the protection of the natural environment. The obligation of minimum 37% of expenditure of investment and reform programs contained in each national recovery and resilience plan to support climate objectives and for all investments and reforms to respect the do not harm principle will enhance our efforts in this direction. A key challenge for achieving energy efficient economies is to successfully shift from linear to circular economic models. Redesigning the methods of production, sale, and consumption requires a radical change of mindsets and lifestyles. Greater emphasis must also be placed on the reskilling of workforce to facilitate its smooth reintegration to the new labour market, as well as on the adaptation of educational and employment policies to the new market needs. Parliament's dear colleagues must ensure that the energy transition is just and inclusive. Vulnerable social groups who will be more severely affected by job losses due to the phase out of financing carbon-intensive industries must be protected. Parliamentarians are instrumental in enacting and monitoring the implementation of legislation that responds to the particular challenges of each country towards achieving the optimal penetration of renewable resources. As parliamentarians, we must exert pressure on governments to provide attractive incentives such as green loans, tax incentives, and a regulatory framework that eliminates the red tape and improves the investment conditions and the business environment for renewable projects. First and foremost, parliaments must generate greater political commitment, which is the key towards developing a shared long-term vision and towards achieving our ambitious climate objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lekades. I now invite Honorable Ibtisam Azoui, Member of Parliament of Morocco. Honorable, you have the floor.
Good afternoon from Morocco. I am really glad and honored to take part and to participate in this 6th edition of IRENA Legislators Forum. And I would like to thank the International Renewable Energy Agency for inviting me. The COVID-19 pandemic is having a major impact on energy systems around the world. Government lockdowns have prompt change in behavior. Most people are teleworking, business and leisure travel has been sharply reduced, and consumers have shifted more of their purchases online. These changes may have long-term impacts on clean energy progress, depending on whether positive aspects associated with the behaviors can be sustained after the crisis ends. In some countries, it had an impact like curbing investments and threatening to slow the expansion of key clean energy technologies. Governments all over the world have an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate clean energy transitions by making investments in renewables as part of stimulus packages to rebuild their economies in a more sustainable and inclusive way. Investing in renewables whose costs continues to fall rapidly can stimulate job creation and economic development while reducing emissions and fostering further innovation. I can mention 4 factors that can help to increase the use and promote the renewable energy use and politics after this health crisis ends. First of all, we need to have a real strong political will and support, and we have a major role to play as parliamentarians, either at the national level through our parliamentary institutions and political parties, or at the international levels through networks and events and forums like IRENA's Forum. As parliamentarians, we have many tools that we should use in advocating, in improving our legislative frameworks and amending, for example, the projects of the finance law each year, for example. Also through evaluating, monitoring public policies, and we can support this energy transition in our countries. Second point is that renewables have to be supported by smart, ambitious, and inclusive policies. In many countries, for example, renewables receive priority through market regulation. Third point is that we should encourage and support continuous innovation. Renewable energy has become the cheapest source, one of the cheapest source of energy. One of IRENA's reports shows that the cost of solar had fallen by 82% over the last 10 years. And the fourth point is the preferred investment, is that renewable energy has become should become investors' preferred choice for new power plants. Energy is a fundamental pillar of economic, political, and social development post-crisis. The majority of African countries, for example, have a significant lack of access to energy, as fossil fuels continue to dominate their energy mix. Africa is changing rapidly. In 2050, it will have a population of 2 billion, 3 or 5 of whom will live in cities, which means that there will be more need of energy, and the demand of energy will increase. And Africa has more than 170%. Germany, which is the leader in solar energy. So that Africa needs an energy model capable of meeting these needs while respecting environmental standards in a continental space considered among the first victims of global warming. Morocco, my country, is a country which has succeeded in developing clean energies, and which is ready to share its expertise and know-how with African partners in this new situation which is emerging. Morocco is now one of the world pioneers in renewable energy integration, targeting 52% of its total power to come from renewables by the end of 2030. At the end of last year, we reached 42%, which is one of the most ambitious clean energy targets in the world. The country is also now home to one of the largest concentrated solar farms in the world. The project is called Noor. Noor in Arabic means light. Morocco's energy transition is based on political approach, which is its success. And also, we have developed many strategies to develop diversified renewable energies like solar, wind, and others to satisfy the growing electricity demand, to preserve the environment, and to reduce the dependence on polluting resources. And for this, we have an important legal framework, but we still need to make more efforts in Parliament in regarding the legislative level. Recently, we voted a law text to create a dedicated agency for the development of renewable energy in order to strengthen the governance of this sector. But we still need to make more efforts to meet all our targets. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Honorable Azawi. It is now my pleasure to invite Honorable Badil On, Chair, Global Renewable Congress.
Thank you, Kende, dear Director General, distinguished participants. I'm glad to join this debate here. I have experience of more than 30 years in politics, most times in the parliament, but also 10 years as a minister. And I'm now a special representative of energy in Africa of the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. But after my time in the German Bundestag, I decided with some friends to make the foundation of a global network of parliamentarians who have the goal of 100% renewables. It is called Global Renewable Congress, and we had this idea 4 years ago at the IRENA conference. And now we made a lot of work because we make an exchange of ideas and experience and help parliamentarians to bring renewables forward. And I would like to share with you some information I got with these two functions. And the first one is that from the ministry, we made a study in last summer with 44 countries and a response of 600 institutions. What is about the situation of small and medium-sized local entrepreneurs who are engaged in renewables? And the answer was a catastrophe, because 85% of the small and medium-sized local companies said they will not survive this crisis. They are afraid to be successful. But the good knowledge was that most of them only need little money. So the very small ones said, if we get 5,000 euro, we can survive. And others, bigger ones, said, if we get 10,000 euro, it's a hope to survive. And then we started a program of 10 million euro to help this local markets, because if this infrastructure is breaking down, we have a work of 3 or more years to build it up again. So it's very, very important that the local entrepreneurs, not the international ones, but I mean the local entrepreneurs, the local markets can survive in this, this crisis. And the second very important point is from my network, the Global Renewable Congress. In April last year, we had a study and gave some ideas to parliamentarians what are good plans and good ideas and good experience for recovery packages. Because every government at that time was looking for recovery packages to overcome the crisis. And then we said it's a good idea to bring some ideas to the parliamentarians. And now we made an examine of some countries in Asia of their recovery packages. And these countries in Asia, they are the Bangladesh, they are India, they are Malaysia, Philippines, and South Korea. And also we made some studies in the EU, the European Union, Spain, Germany, and France. And if you need more information, I gave a PowerPoint presentation to IRENA, and IRENA will send it to you so you can look for more details, because we don't have the time to do it here at this debate. But the results of the studies are very clear, and I will summarize it in three short points. First one, more and more countries decided for renewables. And the main argument is that they are more independent, because in the pandemic, we had disruption of supply chains. And if they must import oil, gas, or coal, they couldn't in some parts. So, but you have the sun and the wind in every country. So renewables make your country more independent of disruption of chains. The other is that the governments noticed that renewables are really cheaper than fossil fuels, and that you can implement renewables faster than fossil fuels because they are smaller, they are decentralized, and they are not this big project of big power plants. And you can create a lot of jobs with renewables, especially local jobs in rural areas. And that is very important for these countries, most of these developing countries. Yeah, I think that was the main points why the countries decided for renewables. And the second point I would like to mention is renewables help to overcome hunger and poverty. So because more and more governments combine the production of energy, for example, with agriculture. So they are looking to replace diesel water pumps by photovoltaic pumps. They're looking for small craftsman business in these villages. They have mills for grain. They are drying fruits and vegetables. And so they have added values in these villages very far away, have more income, have more jobs and more perspective for the population. And they can cool fish or medicine and then help the population in a lot of more issues. And we see more and more that we are combining the production of energy by transport. For example, e-bikes, for example, e-motorcycles or small e-cars. And then you can bring your goods from the village to the market with this e-mobility. And that is even more, we can see this sector coupling, especially in industrial countries too, is on another level. But for example, in Germany, we have a lot of times wind energy, electricity from wind, but we can't use it because it's too much. and then we can store this electricity and use it for e-cars or use it for hydrogen or electricity to gas. And the last point I would like to mention is, what do we need to be successful? First, we need other financial instruments for decentralized small projects, because in my job in the ministry, I am now working with KfW, that is a bank of Germany for developing countries. And we are looking for funds for small projects. But because these banks are very interested in big projects, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, but we have to look for small projects. And so we are now looking for crowdfunding funds. We are looking for smaller, for a possibility to finance smaller projects. That is very important. The second one, we need a training of the local people and a participation of local people, because these local people have the responsibility that these renewables are working. For example, clean the panels, put water on the battery. So they have more responsibility, but they have even more income with the renewables. Second, in many countries, we have administration burdens. And that is often because the lobby, the fossil lobby, is interested to have the power even in the future. And so I think we must overcome this administration burdens. And as my colleague from Morocco said, more engagement in renewables. And if it's possible, we need digital solutions. Pay as you go, mobile money, smart meter. And at the end, I would say this pandemic showed us that renewables make the countries more resilient, not only in the pandemic crisis, but also in the climate crisis. That's what I would like to tell to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Babelhorn. Colleagues, we've reached the point where we can turn to the audience, our other colleagues on the line, to also share some of their thoughts. Before we do that, I would like to ask all panelists to keep their cameras open so colleagues can see all of you, the panelists. And now we will turn over to colleagues. Key issues we want you to contribute now to the discussion are the following. What are the challenges that you face as you try to integrate renewable energy in your rebuilding agenda, in your COVID recovery plans? How have renewable energy solutions in your countries helped to enhance health service delivery based on what you have seen? And what more can we do as parliamentarians to increase the ambition for this energy transition, as Rabia mentioned in her presentation? With that said, I think we have our first speaker. I will encourage colleagues to please restrict it to 3 minutes so that we can bring in as many other colleagues as possible. I turn to Excellency Honorable Juan Miguel Macapagal Arroyo from Philippines. Over to you.
It is my profound honor as the newly elected chairperson of the Committee on Energy of the House of Representatives of the Philippines to express my solidarity with fellow parliamentary leaders from across the world in our common desire towards a renewables-based energy transition, and reaffirm the commitment of my country towards sustainable energy transition, particularly under the better normal conditions as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 is a year of great upheaval. The pandemic clamped down on air traffic. 5 oil majors have progressively repositioned themselves for energy transition away from fossil fuels. ExxonMobil was replaced by a software stock in the Dow Jones. Dependence on the volatile fossil fuels became an energy security threat. All this while, my country still bears the brunt of climate change disasters, resulting in the strongest typhoon to hit the planet in 3 years, as well as massive flooding. It was a wake-up call which the Philippine government has finally heeded. In October, the Department of Energy announced a moratorium on endorsements for greenfield coal power plants, effectively shifting the country's energy policy from technology neutral to a more flexible power supply mix, utilizing, of course, renewable energy. It is also allowed foreign ownership of geothermal plants. In 2008, when I was first chairman of the Committee on Energy, together with Deputy Speaker Lauren Ligarda, when she was still senator, I was the Committee on Energy chairman. We passed the Renewable Energy Act, which laid the foundation for achieving the country's long-term goal of developing sustainable sources of renewable energy. We have long foreseen the dependence on fossil fuels and other non-renewable energy supply is costly and unsustainable in the long run. This pandemic made this fact more apparent and immediate. Among the energy policies the government primarily through the Department of Energy is currently pushing are Renewable Portfolio Standards, or the RPS, which mandates electricity power industry participants to source or produce a specified portion of their electricity requirements from eligible renewable energy resources. Second, Green Energy Auction Program, or the GEAP, which sets the framework for which the DOE shall facilitate the procurement of supply from RE projects by the mandated participants under the RPS on-grid rules through a competitive process for their compliance with the RPS program and as applicable for their long-term power supply requirements. Third, Renewable Energy Market, or the REM, rules which establishes the market for the trading of RE certificates between and among trading participants. This will be made possible to the country's REM system, launched in December 2019, as Deputy Speaker Ligarda has mentioned a while ago, which is the online platform where trading participants can manage their RE accounts. Fourth, Green Energy Option, or the GEOP, which set the rules and procedures for proper guidance on end users, RE suppliers, and network service providers in facilitating the option taken by the end users to choose renewable energy resources as sources of their energy. The Philippine Congress is likewise pushing for the passage of the Downstream Natural Gas Policy Framework Bill, as well as proposed legislations on solar energy, waste to energy, and electric vehicles. The road to truly sustainable energy future may years be ahead of us, but rest assured we have taken the first arduous steps towards them, even these difficult times. Through the 2021 IRENA Legislators Forum and Dialogue, we hope to hear how fellow legislators from other countries have implemented their respective renewable energy agenda.
Thank you.
The challenges they have overcome and how we can apply those experiences as actionable steps we can make to ensure a smoother energy transition towards renewable energy in the Philippines.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have heard the clarion call. We have the wake-up call. The next thing to do is to unite and to do our part for the world's energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Arroyo. We're seeing some questions on our chat room, and there's one very good one here that I will probably pose to the Director General of IRENA, but also possible Honorable Babel Horn. Given the importance that we've all seen parliamentarians have played in the recovery processes, and of course, we're calling for more ambitions in the NDCs. Don't you think that in fact, in the next climate discussions, there should be a special summit of heads of parliaments to be well integrated there. Would IRENA, for example, be one of those that can help convene? I know we're targeting mayors and so on, but what about heads of parliaments? That is for the Director General of IRENA and also Honorable Babel Horn, but also for Honorable Lukaitis. I see that Cyprus has a very good emphasis on LNG and gas solutions as part of the transition. Would you make similar recommendations for Sub-Saharan Africa, where a lot of gas resources are being discovered, some integration of gas and renewables as a package in managing their transitions? But first I go to Director General.
Well, thank you, Kande. It's, in fact, it's a very interesting proposal. We can work on it. As you probably remember, the last meeting we had with the parliamentarians, we promised to organize also regional events. Unfortunately, the pandemic has limited our ambition in this respect this year, but it's something that naturally may come in this year. This could be very important, and we can investigate. And I wish now to learn from the coordinator of the parliamentarians if really we can be able to make the president of the parliament join this process towards the COP26. Concerning the gas, the IPPC say that in 2025, the gas production has to be peaked, if we want to stay in line with the Paris Agreement goals. So this has to be taken in mind. My thought in this transition period, that gas may play an important role in the move to the green, the blue hydrogen production. This could be one of the role, in my point of view, for gas in the years to come, and this could be really important for Africa, that can become exporter of blue hydrogen, moving to green hydrogen in the decades to come. So this is my thought also on your second question. Back to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Babel, I think that having the legislators at COP is a good initiative for the Global Renewable Congress. Over to you, Madam.
Yes, it is a good initiative. And for example, from the Global Renewable Congress, we made at every COP, we made something like a breakfast and a meeting of parliamentarians to make an exchange of ideas. But I would like to mention Martin Chungong. He had one of the first speeches, and he is from the IPU. And in the last COPs, we had big meetings from parliamentarians from the IPU. So it's very important for you to ask your parliament to be delegated to this special conferences of the IPU when you're joining the COPs. So because that is really a good exchange of ideas possibility. But as you know, for example, if you are interested, you can contact me, and then we can invite you for our breakfast we are making at every COP. And I think it's very important to look for the parliamentarians, because the parliamentarians are the bridge between the local level and the national parliaments. And they can see what can we do on the local level, because we can only be successful when we are successful on the local level. And you have the contact to the local level, and so you're able to make the right legislation in the national parliaments to bring the renewables forward. So if you're interested, I think be part of the next delegation of the IPU conference that will, I hope, that will be placed at the next COP.
Thank you very much. Honorable Lukaitis, over to you, sir, on the gas question.
Yes, both on the gas question and a possible meeting with the presence of the head of the parliaments. First, concerning the inclusion of the head of parliaments, I believe it's a very good idea, a very good proposal, and I will convey it to the president of the Cyprus parliament. Concerning the gas issue, the natural gas issue, for some decades now, we do have an experience concerning this issue. We still were not able to exploit natural gas in the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus. Nevertheless, I believe, if that was the question, that yes, for countries in Africa as well, in a transitional period, before moving more and more, as is our goal, to renewables, yes, natural gas could be mediate to that period and can be used, of course, in a positive direction.
Yeah. There is a request for the floor from Honorable Gabuza from Zimbabwe. 3 minutes, over to you, Honorable Gabuza. After which we have Honorable Kabule from Syria Republic. Over to you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Honorable Gabuza. I'm from Parliament of Zimbabwe. I chair the Energy Committee in Parliament. I'm very grateful to the invitation and quite happy and following the discussions with a lot of interest. But however, Mr. Chair, I'm going to answer specifically to the issues that are raised in the discussion and those issues that you have raised yourself to us as legislators. The challenges that we have in ensuring that we have a clean energy environment in the whole world. I think first and foremost in Africa, like all other, well, just like Zimbabwe and all other African states, the access to energy, general energy, not necessarily renewable energy, general energy itself, whether renewable or non-renewable, the access to that kind of energy is very limited. Now, when you talk of renewable energy, many people view it as a bonus, as an excess on top of what you already have. I think the first point that we need to address is the issue of availability of energy to almost all those that need it. Then before we can even talk about the renewable energy, how accessible is the general energy to everyone so that people now will start beginning to appreciate renewable energy. Secondly, some of the challenges that we see in the renewable energy sector. For many developing countries, I think the cost of installation of energy, renewable energy projects, it's almost unreachable. It's beyond the reach of many developing countries. We need small projects in schools to light up schools. We need small projects in hospitals, but unfortunately that kind of funding is not available. So these are some of the issues that we need to raise. Now, us as legislators, we have a very limited leeway, but there are things that we can do to ensure that there is the process of having renewable energy is expedited. Issues of the legislation. I think as legislators, we can easily make sure that the investors have got access to very good and easy laws when they need to invest. We have policies that we can put across, like Zimbabwe itself. We have actually put up a renewable energy policy which guides investors on how they need to invest if they have to come into the renewable energy sector. Issues about taxation, I think one of the presenters raised it. It's a very key issue. Legislators can work on that so that when people come to invest in renewable energy, the taxes on imported equipment, imported infrastructure for the projects is reduced. It's zero rated when it comes to the duties and borders. And as a country, we have done very well on that. We have almost zero ratings on all renewable energy projects if we have to import equipment. We also need to look at a very critical issue of funding, which I've already raised. When people are talking about a carbon emission reduction, I think it must be talked together with the issues of renewable energy, because people only appreciate it if we talk about reduction in carbon emissions at those fora. At the same time, we look at possible projects that can reduce the carbon emissions, and these projects mainly could be concentrated on renewable energy. I think if we put it that way, we don't separate the discussions, it would really help, and it would assist especially the developing countries to appreciate the need to reduce carbon emissions by introducing renewable energy projects. Mr. Chairman, otherwise I'm quite grateful. Thank you for the discussions, and we are following them with a lot of interest as a nation.
Thank you very much. We have Honorable Mohammed Katbouleh from the Syrian Arab Republic. Over to you, Honorable. Put your mic on. We can't hear you yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, I greet you from Syria. Civilization Syria, the alphabet. Syria, the cradle of civilization. We thank you for our invitation to the 11th session of the Assembly of the International Renewable Energy Agency. We are participation in this important meeting, this debate of what Syria has been living since 2011 from the organized terrorist attack and armed terrorist organization that have ravaged all the areas they created and destroyed tree and stone. In Syria, there has always been development in all aspects of life, technology, and we have always sought to develop all systems, assembly, and the transformations to renewable energy and benefit from it, and always strive to reduce pollution from renewables energy station and convert to renewable energy to obtain it from natural energy. Through IRENA, we want to revert to that most difficult that the Syria energy sector suffers from, not related to lack of appropriate regulation in general, but it is because of the unilateral coercive measures imposed in Syria by US and EU and some other countries that led to impossibilities of investigations in renewable energy or transitional on, and that relegated negatively on the lives of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to our colleague from the Syrian Arab Republic. I see Martin wants to take the floor. Martin, we've given you a big challenge. We want to take the various issues here to COP. Over to you, sir. Honorable Martin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kande. I just want to reassure participants that yes, indeed, the IPU convenes a parliamentary forum during every COP, and we are in the process of discussing with the British government and the Italian government, who are the co-hosts of COP26, the modalities for such a forum to take place in Glasgow later on this year in November. And you can be sure that we will like to work with Francesco, La Camera, and others to fashion an agenda that mainstreams the issue of renewable energies into the program as part of global parliamentary efforts to help parliaments deal with climate change. So yes, we will do that, and we will be discussing modalities for that. My other colleagues from the IPU are also participating in this meeting, and I'm sure they're taking very good note of the points that are being made during this meeting, and we will look at how we factor this into the program for that meeting. We also have a parliamentary action plan on climate change, and I know that renewable energy figures prominently in that parliamentary action plan. Maybe we can offer to share this with the participants and other parliaments so that we see how we can begin to distill our efforts together to promote renewable energies as a source of mitigating the effects of climate change. Thank you very much, Akande.
Thank you. With your permission, honorable participants, I know we have another panel. We've done about an hour and 40 minutes already, halfway through our entire program. Let me just summarize a few messages that have come across from our panelists and those who have intervened as we transition to the next panel. A lot of ideas came up, but more importantly, let me say that we all recognize from the earlier keynote remarks from Martin and Excellency Francesco and others, the power that parliamentarians wield in terms of our power to appropriate resources, our power to do oversight. The DG of IRENA also mentioned one very important thing in passing, our closeness to the people. We know their needs, we know the challenges they face in achieving the various sustainable development goals. And we also know what energy can do to help them achieve those goals, particularly now in this context of COVID. A number of speakers have asked us to increase our ambitions as nations for renewable energy. They've given us evidence about lowering of costs, the advantages of also job creation and wealth creation when we invest in renewables. We've seen evidence from the Solar Association and others, Solar Council, that in fact costs are going down significantly. Martin gave us from their joint policy note, which I'm sure he'll make available to many of us, specific actions they're asking legislators to do. So they've summarized and synthesized that for us very well. We got some specific examples from Honorable Lagarde and others who took the floor about what their countries have done, specific legislations that they've pushed through that we can also see if they will be suitable in our own economies. Rabia, thank you very much for your presentation. I will not even attempt to summarize that, but I'm sure it will be available. But you gave us some clear indication of the multiplier effect of investing in renewables, its impact on GDP and jobs. That data is there that some of us can use in advocating locally in our parliaments. You've emphasized the need for just transitions, looking at the socioeconomic impacts as we move from certain carbon-intensive sectors to others. You've called for a more systemic approach, looking at industrial policy, education and skills, but generally to increase our ambition and maximize the benefits of investing in renewables. I was I was intrigued by Jose Donoso as well. He gave us specific challenges that companies are facing. And I know many of us, particularly those of us in developing countries, we know the mini grid companies are struggling. This COVID it had serious impacts on them. Jose Donoso gave us some good indication of what we can do, and also Babel Home's study that she has also done, Honorable Badil has done in some countries, the impacts on these small businesses and what we can do as legislators to support them. There's a lot of emphasis from our colleague also from Zimbabwe on the availability of money for the small projects. Honorable Badil talked about that. I see that problem everywhere I go. The big projects, there is IFC, there is the World Bank, EIB and others. And they want the big projects, 50 million and above, economies of scale. But the truth is we need a lot of mini grids in the rural poor communities. We need the mini grids to run the rural clinics so that they can store the vaccine for COVID so people can get it. But we are hoping it can be a commercial enterprise that is sustainable over time, that can be scaled up to support agriculture and productive activities in those communities. That money is hard to find. I know from a number of those companies that they're struggling, and I hope that in fact we can have, as some of the MPs have said, innovative instruments to support those kinds of businesses at the same time as we go for the very big projects. Those are some messages. I'm sure as we go, I'll be able to bring some more of those messages in. But with your permission, can we thank our panelists for their wonderful contributions. Thank you so much for taking the floor, all of you, and the panelists. DG, thank you very much. We know you're busy, and if it's time to leave us, we will understand. But thank you again to IRENA and the Director General for keeping us together as parliamentarians. And now we have a concrete proposal that we make our voices heard even louder through the support of Honorable Martin Chugong and others at the next COP to bring some of these developmental issues that renewable energy can enhance and scale up. Thank you so much. With your permission, we would like to switch then to our second panel that will be talking about accelerating the energy transition by scaling up investments in renewables. Please note that these two sessions are not mutually exclusive, but now we want to talk a little bit more on the investment side. So with that, we also have a very good panel. I don't know if our colleague Ahmed Badil is ready, the Acting Director of Project Facilitation and Support of IRENA, to introduce this session for us. Over to you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kande, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all participating colleagues to this important panel. And actually, I would like to present today IRENA's modus operandi and value-added service package for accelerating the energy transition by scaling up and also facilitating investment for renewables. As you are all aware, global renewable energy investments have increased almost steadily since 2013, peaking at $351 billion in 2017. And in 2019 only, the amount of new renewable bar capacity added, excluding large hydro, was the highest ever in history at 184 gigawatts. But the quest to achieve and accelerate the energy transition will require continued mobilization and effective deployment of significant investment in the sector. And as per IRENA's post-COVID recovery analysis, the share of renewables in total final energy use would have to grow at a rate of 1.2% per year, which is five-fold increase from the annual 0.25% rate that can be achieved under the policies currently in place or under considerations. This would yield 28 to 29% global renewable energy share by 2030. And actually, the energy transforming scenario suggests that cumulative energy sector investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency must rise to $49 trillion between now and 2030. This means that the annual investment must reach around $4.5 trillion over the period to 2030. Channeling this investment, however, to the renewable energy sector, especially in developing countries, require steady pipeline of investor-ready and scalable projects. The challenge here in achieving this are manifold actually, including limited capacity to develop investor-ready projects, the weak appetite to assume early-stage
project development risks, lack of access to resources assessments, smaller deal sizes creating barriers to scalability. And here, scalability does not mean about the size of one single project, but also for replicating project at smaller scale, respecting the earlier comments from the previous session, and also structural issues related to policies and regulations. The development of renewable energy provides actually a range of benefits. From investment side, it can be economic and employment opportunities and help secure new investments in a wide range of industries, both at local and national levels. Renewable energy technologies also provides a unique opportunity to control carbon emissions without compromising access to energy, which has important implications for slowing climate change. Thirdly, developing a country-based national renewable resources will create access to energy that is unlimited, thereby reducing countries' reliance on importing resources and strengthening its energy security. Moreover, whether used on a massive scale to power a city or on a small scale to turn a village mini-grid, renewables bring considerable health benefits by providing clean, safe energy without negative impact on fossil fuel, and this strengthens the economies of those countries. However, there are also barriers to overcome in the development of renewable energy. Firstly, technical barriers, which are being lowered as considerable breakthrough continue to be made. Secondly, renewable energy technologies are swiftly becoming more efficient and cost-effective and accessible. Thirdly, economic barriers, which relate mainly to the perception of high upfront cost of electricity generation and persistence of distorting subsidies for fossil fuel. And here, parliamentarians can act on both issues by ensuring renewable energy developments can compete on the level playing field, allowing it to attract necessary investments to launch larger scale projects and also smaller scale, but at a wide level for all areas, specifically in developing countries. The cost to produce renewable energy, as you are all aware, has fallen dramatically in recent years, thanks to technological breakthrough and economies of scale and the continuation on these two fronts. The development of renewable energy actually cannot be achieved without political leadership. And here, parliamentarians have all the power they need in order to act on, first, on voting on laws, legislation on taxes, tax credits for renewable energy, and approving state budgets. And here, equity investment would be scaled up. Also, they have the power to overseeing the operation of governments and have direct access to ministers, prime ministers, and heads of states to monitor those operations. Thirdly, they have the power to influence national policy, building strong legal framework for private sector investments, supporting direct spending towards more renewable energy investments, and on establishing stronger policies and targets for action on more renewables energy deployment. In short, the transition post-fossil fuel will benefit considerably from the support of parliamentarians who will be ready to use their political capital for the promotion of renewable energy. And also, as you are all aware, the following three Parliament's core function provides many different entry points for relevant parliamentarian action. First, through lawmaking, parliamentarians can propose or amend legislation that will strengthen the legal framework and policies pertaining to renewable energy developments. Second, their oversight function empower them to monitor the government's implementation to set policies and targets and allow them to hold the government accountable to those set of policies specifically that relate to private sector investments. And this is closely linked to the parliament pursuing power. Also, as the state budget is considered and approved by the parliaments on an annual basis, parliamentarians can push for budgetary provision dedicated for renewable energy development and related investments, specifically at private sector level. Lastly, in their role as representatives of people, parliamentarians can play an important role on soliciting constituent feedback and building communities that support for more renewable energy investment, especially from private sector. And also, I would like to highlight that engaging constituents on the benefit of renewable energy can be also instrumental in the success of implementing renewable energy, mainly from foreign direct investors. As for the way forward, here is IRENA already started since 2020 and created a dedicated institutional space, namely Project Facilitation and Support Division, to embrace relevant action in the ground for scaling renewable energy investments across its member countries. Actually, all project facilitation activities are dedicated to improve investment readiness of renewable energy projects by concentrating on upstream support activities to achieve global goal of matching climate finance, which is very much needed, with investment-ready projects, both from private and public sector, and in partnership with interested banks who are working with IRENA. And in order to do this, IRENA is focusing its effort on the preparation of bankable concept notes and providing all relevant technical assistance measures along those notes. And also the project facilitation work of IRENA is integrated into Climate Investment Platform Initiative, which is led by IRENA, UNDP, and SE for All, in close cooperation with Green Climate Fund. As you are all aware, CIP was launched at the Climate Action Summit in New York in September 2019, with the objective to achieve ambitious indices and align efforts to attract investments in renewable energy. And here in IRENA, we are currently receiving requests for support from three main work streams, which are direct requests for support from member countries. Second, via Climate Promise Initiative in partnership with UNDP. And third, via Climate Investment Platform registered partners, especially foreign direct investors, multilateral development banks, and international financial institutions. And I have to say, over the past 11 months, we have achieved a lot of quick wins for closing some of the projects, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa, from some countries also in small island developing states, reaching more than 500 megawatts. The CIB actually works in 4 tracks in order to create conducive business climate where investments are leveraged and projects are delivered. The 4 tracks of the CIP include: first, raising ambition of clean energy goals across all our IRENA member countries. Second, enhance policies and regulation to attract investments for renewable energy. Third, create sustainable local markets for renewable energy investment projects, mainly for local and small grid projects and decentralized energy solution from renewable energy. And finally, support financial de-risking tools and systems for investments in order to enhance investment opportunities within these countries. To conclude, we hope this presentation gives you a better understanding of IRENA's value-added services, which are available to you and your fellow legislators in your respective countries. And in IRENA, we welcome and encourage you all to work with us to bring clean energy and related investments to your local communities. And also, we stand ready to work with you to understand your needs and aspiration, and we will support you with relevant advice and tools we have now in IRENA in the best way we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kande, and I will leave the 3 questions for the discussion already at your hand, and looking forward to an interesting discussion, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I'm sure my colleagues and I are saying thank you so much. You answered some of the issues that were raised before. What kind of support can be available to countries to be able to develop projects? And I really like the reform that the Director General introduced by creating this Project Facilitation and Support Division. And you've really done very well in telling us how you, in fact, help to support countries in collaboration with your colleagues in the Climate Investment Platform the DG also mentioned earlier. This would be a very important tool and unit to really support countries in getting real bankable projects into institutions that have funding. Excellent, thank you so much. I'm sure there will be many more questions coming up for you. I now turn to Adam Bruce, Global Head of Corporate Affairs, Mainstream Renewable Power. Over to you.
Chair, distinguished colleagues, thank you for the invitation to participate in today's session. I'm joining you from Edinburgh in the United Kingdom, where it has just started to snow. I'm very sorry that we're not able to meet together in person in the warmth of Abu Dhabi, but I hope that we will next year. I'd like, if I may, Chair, to pick up from where Ahmed left off in his presentation and share with you some insights from our work with legislators and governments in markets around the world. I'd also like to share our experience in particular from South Africa. By way of background, Mainstream Renewable Power is a global developer of wind and solar energy power plant. We were founded in 2008 to help electrify the world with renewable energy. And since then, we've become the largest renewable energy player in Chile, the second largest in South Africa, and are developing Southeast Asia's largest offshore wind farm in Vietnam. I've been with Mainstream since we started, and one of my roles since then has been to engage with governments and with parliamentarians to share best practice as to the acceleration of a just energy transition from fossil fuels to renewables. As Ahmed very clearly demonstrated, we need to quadruple the amount of investment in renewable energy if we're to meet the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. There is no shortage of capital available for investment in renewables. Investors are increasingly aware of the very high risk of stranded assets associated with funding new coal or new gas plant. If we're to accelerate this transition to investment in renewable energy, we need to address the critical blockage, regulation, and regulation designed for yesterday's power systems. We need new regulatory structures that will attract investment, and this is where parliamentarians have a critical role, to articulate the need for change and to champion the new system architecture that's required. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on a case study, that of South Africa, which was an early adopter of new regulation designed to incentivize renewable energy, and to share with you some ideas that you might champion in turn. Turning then to the next slide. South Africa launched its Renewable Power Procurement Programme, known as the REI4P, in 2010. It's part of a wider programme of national development within a framework of interlocking policy and regulation. And since its launch, the programme has gone through 4 rounds and has survived both political and legal challenge. Starting at the top left, we have the National Development Plan, South Africa's 30-year look ahead, covering all sectors of the economy. And under the NDP is the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, the country's 20-year energy assessment. And the IRP sets out capacity volumes for generation technologies, which enable the minister then to issue regular determinations for the procurement of new power. And these determinations then form the basis on which the arm's length IPP office releases an RFP for another auction round to procure more renewable energy. And these 4 elements combine to provide very significant investor confidence that the REI4P is administratively robust, grounded in law, and not a one-off. And what has also helped has been the cross-party parliamentary support for the programme and the regular parliamentary committee hearings to check in on its progress. And this all helps to add to investor certainty. So if we can turn to the next slide, thank you. Why is that important? That certainty on both sides of government and of investors has had very clear results, not just in driving down the bid cost of electricity, but also in delivering very significant wider socioeconomic benefits. The dark blue block on the right of the bar chart shows where we might land in terms of pricing in this year's 5th procurement round. New renewable energy, principally wind and solar power, is now materially cheaper than new and existing coal-fired generation in that country. And that is one, but not the only, success of the programme. And this has happened because the REI4P has de-risked the development process because of the interlocking elements I referred to in my last slide. And this has helped reduce the cost of capital, the cost of technology, and ultimately the cost of electricity. Risk is allocated properly between the project sponsors, between government and the national electricity company Eskom as off-taker. Government knows that risks of unrealistic bids or failure to deliver projects are mitigated by the rules of the procurement process. And project developers and investors know that the risks of payment default or procurement are mitigated by obligations on Eskom and on the government. And what's really important about this process is that it has succeeded in delivering more than just electricity. The government of South Africa had very clear social and economic objectives when they launched the programme. And they've broadly been successful in delivering real investment in economically marginal areas of the country, as we were discussing in the previous panel, building up local supply chains and encouraging local investors, including pension funds, to invest in the process. So looking at the REI4P through the lens of a just transition, you can see that South Africa has built a pathway from coal to renewable energy that creates jobs, delivers economic diversification and beneficiation, and mitigates the impacts of climate change. So what might we learn from this experience? Firstly, I'd encourage all of you to become champions of the transition to renewable energy, and we've heard a lot of really encouraging discussion already today. If you don't have a parliamentary group promoting all renewables, set one up. Hold regular meetings both to scrutinise government delivery of the new system architecture that I described earlier, and to help identify and remove barriers to investment. Secondly, work with colleagues in other parliaments at sessions such as this to share best practice. And in this regard, I really congratulate IRENA on this initiative and on its regional initiatives, such as the ASEAN workshops, that have allowed countries across many regions to share what works and what doesn't work. Take the opportunity also to look over the horizon. The transition to renewables is not just about the electricity sector. How are your governments planning for transition in other sectors of the economy? And lastly, if the transition to renewables is to succeed, it must show beneficiation across the economy, as we were discussing in the previous panel. Look to countries like South Africa, which have succeeded in building new businesses, creating thousands of new jobs in the wider economy on the back of investment into renewable energy. Chair, distinguished guests, thank you for your time, and I very much look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Adam, for that presentation. It brings back a lot of memories for me. I used to go to South Africa to visit Paul Peters when they were launching these initiatives back in 2010 in my role then on the AC for All and the Director General of UNIDO. And it's good to see how much indeed in a very short time, within a decade, renewable energy is able to compete with coal in South Africa. And I know there are many, many more innovations, but thank you for stressing the planning and some of the systems approach that Rabia mentioned that South Africa has done. There's a development plan, there's a 20-year IRP to accompany that national development plan. There are clear development and social objectives for power sector to achieve and so on. So you gave us some of the key building blocks, but importantly, key message you gave us, legal certainty. Investors are clear what is going to happen, the transparency also in the system. Thank you so much for that. And we have a very good panel of honorable members who would want to react. And from the list of countries, you can see these are all countries where they've undertaken similar planning approaches that have all gone to their parliaments for approval. Thank you so much. So we have a very distinguished panel again. And again, I'll go according to the order that I have here. I would first wish to, and by the way, for those the other colleagues who were not able to take the floor in the last session, I will start with you in this session very soon during the Q&A time. So for the panel, I want to start with Jutta Paulos, member of the European Parliament from Germany. Over to you, Honorable Paulos.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks to all the distinguished panelists which have already shared their views. That was really very interesting, and I think it is of utmost importance that we share best practice examples all over the world. In addition to what Adam has just shared with us, I would like to reflect very briefly on the role that Germany's legislation has played in making renewable energy cost efficient. 20 years ago, Germany passed a law on renewable energy, and that had exactly the elements that Adam was talking of. It was simple, it was predictable, and it fostered a huge amount of investment of ordinary people like me. 20 years back, I did not have a lot of money, but I could borrow from the bank sufficient money to set up solar panels on my roof, because I could show them the law saying, look, I will be remunerated through a law, and I will get my money back, and I will be able to pay back my loan. And millions of German citizens did exactly that. And with this law, the rise of the renewables was fostered quite efficiently, because mass production of solar panels was one of the key steps which brought down the price to where it is today. When I first put up these solar panels on my roof, the price per kilowatt peak was more than 6,500 euros. And I put up a second solar panels on the other side of the roof 5 years ago, and then the price was down to just 1,200 euros per kilowatt peak. And now I have spoken to some people working in the sector saying they can achieve even 800 euros per kilowatt peak. So we have a price reduction of nearly 90%, which is really great, and which makes it possible that renewables are cost competitive today in most regions of the world. But actually, I wanted also to share with you the experience from European Parliament, where I have been a member since July 2019. In European Parliament, we have a parliamentary association called EUFORUS, and this association is made up of members of parliament, of European Parliament, but also of national parliaments all over Europe. And these EUFORUS members are just dedicated to make the energy transition a success. And it's open for everyone who shares these goals. And that's very important, because in European Parliament, we work together interfractionally, so to speak. There is no such thing as these are the groups which form the government, and these are the opposition groups, and the ones get their things done and the others have no chance. But it's rather negotiated for each and every law separately. So it's very important to have these alliances which bridge the gaps between the groups. And EUFORUS members have already achieved a lot just by making sure that they will be the ones negotiating the legislative proposals that are so important for the energy transition. As this session was actually called Financing the Energy Transition, I would like to share with you the achievements we have made on the European money which is being rolled out, especially for the Recovery and Resilience Fund in the wake of the COVID pandemic, because also the European Union is in a deep economic crisis due to the fallout of the pandemic, so to speak. And Parliament and Council of the European Union, which is made up by the member states, have agreed a Recovery and Resilience Fund. And in this fund, 250 billion euro are going to be firmly assigned to climate investments, which is really a big step forward. 100% of this money is attached to do no significant harm, and we even have a qualitative target for biodiversity. So these the whole Recovery and Resilience Fund, 37% of this fund is going to be spent on climate, which is those 250 billion euro just falling short a bit of what my group, the Greens, has been demanding. But what's equally important, that we have a good tracking methodology, so that you cannot just say, well, this is for climate, regardless what it is, but you have firm criteria which are set out in the taxonomy. I will say something about the taxonomy a bit later on. So we don't have those old Rio markers, which are somewhat outdated, but we have very clear markers which are laid down in law, so no one can say, well, I will just build new roads and this is somehow good for climate. No, you have to prove that your investment is good for climate. And the taxonomy was passed already last year, and the European Commission has now brought out a sort of textbook how to understand and how to map actually these markers. For example, you have very limited, very clear limits on how much climate emissions, energy production may have in order to be labeled as moderately green. So you have dark green energy production, which is renewables only. You have moderately green energy production, which has a very firm limit of only 250 grams per kilowatt hour, which even gas plants cannot achieve without further investment in, for example, CCS. And also what's in the RRF, you have to do an ex post reporting to enable the green bonds. So if a country says we will give out green bonds in order to enhance climate spending within our national borders, they have to do an ex post reporting, and they have to adhere to those same criteria, which are very, very strong. For example, any investment must not do long-term damage to the environment. And so we think that this is a huge step forward, and it comes exactly right for preparation of the next steps, which will be very important in legislation this year. You may have heard that the European Union is in the framework of passing a climate law. The Parliament has already agreed on a position. Equally, the Council has agreed on a position, and now there are negotiations between Parliament and the Council of Member States in order to finalize the climate law. And we will end up with a goal of at least 55% emission reduction until 2030 as compared to 1990. And if this climate law, when this climate law is finished, we will have to adapt all our other legislation. The European Union has an emission trading scheme, for example, which is for energy production and also for industry. So everyone that wants to burn something producing CO2 has to buy certificates for that. And the rules for these certificates, how many are issued, how can they be traded, what is going to be with if a plant closes, what's going to happen with these certificates, all these rules are put into legislation. And of course, this legislation will have to be adopted once we have agreed on a higher climate goal. The same goes with the Renewable Energy Directive, where we have a specific target for 2030. This also will have to be raised when we have agreed on a new climate goal. And there I have the big hope that now that the renewable energy technologies have all become very, very cost efficient, it will be much easier to convince member states that are still strongly dependent on fossil fuels, especially on coal, but also on gas in some cases, that they will be ready to agree on higher targets for renewables, especially since the European Investment Bank will also be happy to finance these projects. Yep. One big obstacle, in my view, is actually that we have seen in the past and also in the present, I'm very afraid that we have corruption going on when it comes to building new power plants. And if there's, for example, a country leader who's closely acquainted with the fossil fuel industry, then he might want to build another coal power plant because there might be 1 or 2 million getting lost in the process somehow. And this is much more difficult with renewable power plants, as though those tend to be smaller. So it's not so easy to distort some of the money that is spent on renewables. But at the same time, this is a huge chance when you want to enable citizens to be part of the energy transition, which is exactly as I was talking about in the German example, because in European law, we have already secured the right of the citizens to produce, to store, to sell their own renewable energy. So any citizen who wants to put solar panels on their roof and sell electricity to their neighbors, they can say, this is my right, this is secured in European law. And if you, my home country, do not allow me to do it, then I will hold you liable and I can take you to court. And I think that's a great achievement, because we have a lot of people in Europe that are very, very worried about climate change and want to secure a good future for their children. And what we did at the European level is we enable them to do exactly that, be part of the transition and be part of a climate neutrality in the European Union. I could talk about 10 or 15 minutes more, but my time is over, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Many good examples you've given, but good frameworks. Keep them simple, predictable, build alliances across sectors and across countries, deal with corruption in the old big plant investments, but also the last one I really liked, enable citizens to be part of the transition. Thank you so much. Now we go to Honorable Sven Clement, Member of Parliament of Luxembourg. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation, and especially thank you for all the information that we got in the first panel, but also in between. I wanted to focus on how to finance renewables. I believe that the issue in Luxembourg is definitely not the challenge of collecting capital, but more the lack of a vision on how to deploy renewable energies throughout the country. And I have a feeling that for a lot of Western states, that same is true. We know that the fossil fuel industry is already allocating a lot of capital into renewable energies in the Western world, or in the global North, as it's somehow called, but it's often a lack of vision on how to deploy it and where to deploy it that is hampering its success. So I believe that first things first, we need to mobilize the capital, not only from private actors, but public actors need to be leading by example. One issue that we encounter here in Luxembourg, as an example, is we have a climate law. We have huge subsidies in place, a lot like Germany, but the publicly owned buildings don't have solar on their roofs. We only have about 8% of publicly owned buildings that have currently solar on their roof. So that is definitely an issue. And if we want to mobilize and be leading by example, the public institutions need to lead by example and put not only their money where their mouth is, but also do exactly what they claim citizens should do. If we are looking at which capital is available, a lot has been said about the pension funds. I think that the pension funds last year held globally about 44 trillion US dollars in assets. Jeremy Rifkin, who is often cited, especially in Europe, as a forethinker about the industrial revolutions, has claimed in his book, The Green New Deal, that we need to mobilize this citizens' capital, because we should never forget that pension funds are paid for by the citizens. So it's the citizens' capital that should be mobilized to finance the future instead of financing backwards energy generation, as is currently being done in Luxembourg. Sadly enough, we still have about 5% of our pension fund blocked in fossil fuel, something that even with a Green Party in government hasn't changed that much. And we are working on it in Parliament challenging the government to reduce our resiliency on fossil fuels. Thus, I'm a bit skeptical that simply asking pension funds to finance renewable energy will be enough. We need to build a coalition, not only of politicians, but of ordinary citizens that ask for their money to be responsibly invested. Only if we show that investing into renewables instead of fossil fuels, where we risk to have stranded assets in the near to midterm future, will yield better results for our pensions, then we will really have that change in thinking, that change in attitude. And if we want to achieve that, we need to be bottom up. Politicians meddling in pension funds, and Jutta Paulus said it before, there's always a risk of corruption. We should not be dictating how pension funds use their money, but we need, as politicians, build up that coalition with our electorate to ask on a broader base how to invest that money. So that's definitely something on how to find the money. The pension funds have the money and they need to invest it. And in an almost 0% interest rate environment, as we see mostly in the northern countries, they need to find interesting places to put their money. And we should show them that renewables are that interesting place. So how can we do that? How can we as parliamentarians support that? It's my strong belief that we need to adhere to rule of law, that we need to give them the necessary guarantees that their assets will not be lost somehow. We need to put into place the necessary safeguards, legally speaking, so that we can guarantee a return on invest. I know from personal experience in Africa that there are already interesting projects that are privately funded that could be exponentially more efficient if they could use economies of scale. They are mostly focusing currently on island solutions that work for one village at a time. I believe that instead of simply looking at microgrids, we need to look at how to integrate those microgrids into a macrogrid. That will be certainly a challenge, especially if every village at some point will have their different power generators. How to merge them into a bigger grid will be not only a regulatory challenge, but also a technical challenge. But I'm certain that with the manpower that we have, with all the schools that we have everywhere in the world, we can achieve that, mobilize the capital, and certainly also mobilize the knowledge to put it into good use.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good ideas there. Citizens' capital within the pension funds, building the coalition bottom up so that citizens can put the pressure on these funds so that they can be invested responsibly in RE, rather than MPs getting directly involved in dictating what pension funds do. Thank you so much. We'll move to Honorable Nicholas Dunlop. Nick, I'm trying to make you a member of parliament now, but he's the Secretary General of the Climate Parliament, a good friend who also brings parliamentarians together. Over to you, Nick.
Well, thanks, Kande. It's not often that I'm described as honorable, though I would like to think of myself as honest. But thank you and congratulations to everybody who's lasted this long on this sort of marathon video conference that we're on. But it's been fascinating. I've been listening with great interest. And I think as we come towards the end, it's useful to focus particularly on the role of MPs in promoting investment in renewable energy. And I think my first point there would be that MPs don't have to be technical experts. Governments have technocrats for that. What MPs need to be focusing on is speed and scale. everybody is doing renewable energy in every country in the world, good things are happening. But the problem is that it's not happening at the speed and the scale that is necessary to keep us in line with a safe global carbon budget in terms of global temperature rise. We've got in the last report from the UN scientific panel, the IPCC, the scientists telling us that at our current level of global emissions, we will have used up a safe budget for a 1.5 degree temperature rise globally within 7 years. And this just underlines the urgency. We have a recent scientific study telling us that if we go to 2 degrees, if we blow through that budget and go to 2 degrees, 1 billion people will find themselves living in places where the average temperature is as hot as it is in the hottest parts of the Sahara Desert today. Nobody lives in the hottest parts of the Sahara Desert because it's too hot. You can't grow crops, you can't raise animals. And if we go to 3 degrees, which is where we're headed right now, that's the trajectory we're on, 3 degrees or more, then another 1 billion people will find themselves having to flee simply because of the heat. So what this means in terms of members of parliament, I think, is there needs to be a big focus on targets and plans. You don't have to be an expert to say to your government, what about raising the ambition of our renewable energy targets? For example, many countries have a target for the percent of renewable energy in the electricity supply by 2030. Hardly any countries have a target that's in line with a safe global carbon budget. And that is an important role for MPs to be pushing and encouraging their ministers and heads of government, your ministers and heads of government to raise the targets and to put in place action plans to achieve them. Second point is, one of the things MPs can do very well is help good ideas to travel from one country to another more quickly. And Jutta has taken a perfect example of this. I'm very glad she did, because I was going to talk about it otherwise. And that's the feed-in tariff laws that got going in Europe 20 years ago. Denmark had pioneered feed-in tariffs guaranteeing a good price for wind power. The German feed-in tariff law that really transformed the situation for renewable energy was actually drafted by a small group of members of the German Bundestag, many of whom I have the pleasure of knowing, who got together in their spare time, wrote this law, pushed it through with some government resistance, with a lot of resistance from the power industry. And within about 3 years, this not very sunny country, Germany, had half the global surface of solar panels. And then other European countries followed, like Italy, Spain, the UK, and again, parliamentarians played a key role. The UK feed-in tariff law began as a private member's bill introduced by an MP. So, it's those efforts by small numbers of members of parliament that created the market when renewable energy wasn't so cheap to enable factories in China and Europe and all over the world to make it cheap. So now wind and solar simply cannot be beaten on price. Third and last point, Kande, is I think we really need to be working on increasing the role of MPs at the global level. And of course, the IPU meetings and the other events that go on at the UN climate conferences and that will happen in Glasgow in November are all part of that. In addition to that, we need to really be getting MPs actively engaged in the process. And an example of this is something that the Climate Parliament is doing. We're a network, a global network of members of parliament, as many of you know. We've teamed up with the International Solar Alliance, which was launched at the last big climate summit in Paris 5 years ago by the Prime Minister of India and the President of France to organize what we're calling a Green Grid Initiative, which will be launched by a group of heads of government issuing a joint declaration. We're calling it a One Sun Charter in Glasgow. That'll be followed by setting up working groups on a whole series of different issues. And one of the main focuses of this is the Prime Minister of India's vision that he likes to describe as one sun, one world, one grid. In other words, the need for continental scale grids, in addition to solar microgrids, solar panels on every rooftop. We need continental scale grids so that countries can trade renewable energy across their borders to make possible a totally reliable supply of cheap 100% renewable energy for everyone. And so we're going to break that down into a series of tasks, set up working groups that include representatives of governments, of international organizations, and members of parliament. And thus the members of parliament are an equal partner in the process. And my last sentence, Kande, I'm sure I'm running over time, is that the reason it's so important that you as members of parliament play a central role, even at the global level as well as the national or regional, is that it's the parliaments which are the main channel for the most important ingredient of all, and that's political will. When members of parliament are hounding their ministers, hounding their heads of government, asking questions, wanting to know how we're going to go faster, reflecting public opinion in that way, that's creating political will. Ministers and heads of government then give more attention to the issue. That's political will. So that to me is why you as members of parliament have such an indispensable role to play. Thanks, Kande.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Nick. And we thank you very much as well in your own way that you are keeping members of parliament connected through the climate parliament. And thank you for the clear indication. It's about skill and scale, speed and scale now. Thank you for educating us on the safe global carbon budget. For some of us, that is a relatively new concept, beyond, as you said, beyond just setting targets for renewables and making that case for that it is urgent. And we'll see, and also encouraging us, as IRENA is doing, and Babel is also trying to do through the Renewables Congress, to share ideas, to learn from others and adapt and take some of those to our own parliaments for legislation. Thank you so much. I see a number of MPs have indicated interest to intervene, some from the last session and some currently now. So I go straight to the list of speakers. Honorable Senator Dugal from India, over to you. Please keep your interventions 3 minutes, please, all of you. Thank you so much, Honorable. Honorable from India, Sunita Dugal.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Chair, and I'm very delighted to join this and very thankful for the invitation and very thankful to the IRENA also. I'm Sunita Dugal, Member of Parliament from India. I'm Chairperson of Commonwealth Women Parliamentarian Association and member of Finance Committee and member of Ethics Committee. And I just want to say that nature is kind enough and have lots of resources giving to us, but simultaneously, as we have seen in the pandemic, that is sometimes it is cruel. If we will not make a balance, then it will be cruel also. So I just want to tell you that what India is doing particularly, and I'm very happy to, the way the insightful, the panelist has given the insightful this discussion, particularly Nicholas G. I'm very thankful for him that what the Member of Parliament should do. I'm very interested to, visit frequently all the countries, but because of this pandemic, particularly in your UK, there's a lockdown, I think, and I will be happy in case if everything is just goes right and we just all come across, because as I have already told, that nature is very kind, simultaneously it is very cruel. What goes around comes around. So I just want to tell what India is doing, particularly our Prime Minister is very keen. India deploys renewable energy at a frenetic pace, enhances installed renewable capacity by 2.5 times and solar installed capacity by more than 13 times. Our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, in a message at the inaugural session of First World Solar Technology Summit, said that technology holds the key to scale up the use of solar energy. Technological achievements have already brought about a significant reduction in the price of solar power. A further reduction in the cost will provide a major boost to the use and expansion of renewable energy. He also added, in his in that summit, that he reiterated that 5 years ago, world leaders had taken a pledge to restrict the rise in global temperature through a gradual reduction in the dependence on fossil fuels. Underlining India's commitment lowering carbon footprints, we stress India has lowest per capita carbon emissions in the world. But we have still pressed ahead with deployment of renewable energy at a frenetic pace. So he also said that we have scaled our non-fossil fuel-based power generation to 134 gigawatt, which is about 35% of our total power generation. We are confident of increasing it to 220 GW by 2022. We want to take renewable energy to every village of our country. So India welcome all the countries who are interested to enhance the renewable worldwide. And also in 2018, our government had announced about $1.4 billion US dollar worth of lines of credit for covering 27 solar projects across 15 countries. These projects are in various stages of implementation. And also, I just want to add that on 15 December 2020, our Honorable Prime Minister, he inaugurated 30 GW renewable energy park, largest of its kind in the world. The 30 GW renewable energy park at Kutch, Gujarat. And this project is in line with the Government of India's vision to install 175 GW of renewable energy capacity by the 2022 and is of national importance. So I just want to say that India is in real means going ahead, and we welcome all the countries who are interested to participate and who just want to invest and who just want to become partner of India in this renewable energy field. And I thank you, all of you, all the honorable distinguished panelists and IRENA chairperson and general secretaries and all the members. Thank you so very much.
Yeah. Honorable, if I may ask, we see these great initiatives that His Excellency the Prime Minister is driving and clear targets set for 175 gigawatts of solar by 2022. What is included there to encourage financing, for example, from the pension funds or from the banks, so that private investors can come in? Would you want to talk, say 1 minute? Is that included in this initiative?
Yeah, in our budget, we have provision in our budget, and in 29th of this month only, we are just having a session, and after that we'll having a budget session, and this will be included in our budget session.
Okay.
In our budget, yes.
Excellent. So direct support to private sector to get involved in this initiative. Excellent. We'll now call on Honorable. Let me pull that up. Yeah. We'll now call on Honorable Jesus Lucia Trasuna from Mexico. Honorable, you have the floor. But again, just for you, as you do your intervention, also help us understand if your country is also bringing in pension funds, other institutional investors, and some of the specific measures they are taking to remove barriers. You remember at the beginning, Adams and Ahmed talked about some of these barriers in the countries to bring in investments. So what is Mexico doing?
Gracias, señor. Primero, un saludo.
Yes, many thanks and cordial greetings from Mexico to all of the participants in this Legislators Forum in the IRENA setting and its related meetings. Mexico, as in many other Latin American and Central American countries, finds itself in a situation in which we are trying to bound back from the circumstances, and our government is really placing huge efforts in bringing back the economy. But at the same time, we know that we have a huge amount of work ahead of us in eradicating poverty, and we have to put in place social programs so that social transformation can take place. So I'd like to be very specific, if I may, regarding the way that IRENA is fostering legislators and parliamentarians to put all of our energy into these efforts into facilitating investment. And of course, we have to take into account the features and the particularities of each and every country. Obviously, due to the diversity of cultures and the kinds of renewables that can be deployed in each country, is going to hugely affect the success or the scope in which we can deploy these resources, whether we have wind resources, solar, or water. And of course, due to the environmental situation that each of our countries finds itself in, is going to deeply affect our efforts. At the same time, we realize that it is our responsibility as a member of a global community that we have to make a long-lasting commitment and phasing out fossil fuels is now something we all realize. The depletion of finite resources is now a reality, and we must join in an international effort to implement our efforts in a coordinated manner and avoid the disruption and chaos that is affecting us at present. But at the same time, we must realize that as members of an international community, and especially countries such as our own that are developing nations, must pay special attention to these challenges. We must realize that accelerating resource availability and placing efforts in countries such as Mexico, in which we are trying to put forward initiatives so that renewable energies can be placed at the vanguard of our energy policy. So in this way, it will have beneficial effects both socially and economically. And of course, it is an honor to be a part of this initiative. As a senator of the Republic of Mexico, I stand committed to working towards this objective and working together with you in these initiatives. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I now call on Honorable Keda Bala from Chad. Okay, I think we may not have him online yet. I call Honorable Raul Cacho Q from Mexico.
Hello, everyone. I greet you from Mexico, and I hope you're all in good health. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important forum. I would like to thank the International Renewable Energy Agency for its kind invitation. This forum is taking place at a difficult time for Mexico, and particularly a difficult time for the world. In our country, the growth of clean, renewable, affordable,
Hello, I think we lost, Honorable, we lost you. I think we lost Honorable. So let us see if we can get Honorable Ms. Virginia Lamura from Italy, and then we'll go back to Honorable Raul in a minute. Honorable Lamura, over to you, madam.
Parlerò italiano. Thank you very much. I will speak Italian, and you will hear me through the interpreter. I am a member of the Environment Committee of the Italian Senate, and today in the Environment Committee we shall approve a resolution on a proposal of European regulation modifying the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 55% within the year 2030. This new goal means that we shall revise the goals included in the combined energy plan, energy and climate plan that we adopted already. And now the climate objectives passed by the European Union mandate stronger use of renewable energies, and this has to happen in the framework of compliance with natural ecosystems and biodiversity. The Italian government has approved a national recovery and resilience plan that will be soon introduced in Parliament. And Italy has 8,000 kilometers of coastline, so it is important for us. So sea energy, marine energy is very important for us. This is an issue that I would like to dwell upon for a couple of minutes. On this proposal, in this respect, I would like to underline that Italy is co-chair within IRENA together with Tonga of the platform on renewable offshore energies, and this is significant. This is important, also with respect to the Italian chairmanship of the Italian presidency of G20 next year. Renewable energy plants, both on land and at sea, have an impact on natural ecosystems. We need to reduce this impact. This clear indication is contained in the 2030 strategy for biodiversity and the strategy for offshore renewable energies. The planning of ocean space is a logical step forward in order to revise the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, passed in 1982. So maritime spaces will have to replanned, and combined management of coastal areas will have to be revised. So green transition is important, but also blue transition is important. That's why we need to respect biodiversity also at sea, and we need to protect also marine ecosystems. And in the framework of the Coconut project for the construction of protected marine areas from the coast to the deep sea, together with the wind energy production potential of the sea. So these guidelines will enable us to preserve the prairies of oceanic Posidonia, which is an endemic species of the Mediterranean. The tapeweed, it is known as tapeweed. Also, preservation of mangroves is important. And these natural sinks, like land forests, are essential to fight against climate change. I would like to also remind everyone that Italy, together with the United Nations, together with the United Kingdom, is a co-host of COP26. And this year we will also preside over G20. And I would like to underline the importance of the parliamentary dimension. I would like to remind everyone that we shall hold a parliamentary event within COP26 to be held in the framework of the British and Italian presidency of COP26. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Lamura, for confirming that in fact there will be a legislators session in COP26. We hope that we can also, this is me challenging the Director General of IRENA now, that through your help, we can have a document from the Legislative Forum to the G20 through Francesco's team in IRENA. Maybe some of our key conclusions can go to G20 as well. Thank you so much. I'll try again to go to Honorable Raul Q. Are you on now from Mexico?
Hello.
Yes.
Sorry for the inconvenience. I lost my connection the last time. I would like to thank the International Renewable Energy Agency for its kind invitation. This forum is taking place at a difficult time for the world, and particularly a difficult time for Mexico. In our country, the growth of clean, renewable, affordable, and sustainable energies is at a standstill and in decline as a result of governmental policies. The Mexican Constitution recognizes the fundamental human right to a clean and healthy environment. Protecting it is a part of multiple international commitments on climate change. Complying with them depends on the reduction of polluting emissions in the energy sector. However, the current federal administration favors the use of fossil fuels, stops the development of renewable energies, and limits the investment, construction, and operation of photovoltaic and wind power plants. In this context, the counterweight of the legislative power is key. This is why in this legislature, the Mexican Senate is sending a clear signal by placing the environment at the center of its decisions. During the past legislative year, in the Environmental, Natural Resources, and Climate Change Committee, which I chair, we presented proposals that promote the generation of renewable energies and pursue the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 UN Agenda and of all the international commitments Mexico has signed. As I did in November, when we adopted the Escazú Agreement, I call once again for unity, for us to redouble our efforts to promote the generation of energies from clean, renewable, and affordable sources, so that we can guarantee a better Mexico and a better planet for many generations to come. This is the best sustainable policy for both the present and the future. Thank you, and we'll keep the hard work. Greetings from Mexico.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Director General, we want to thank you for your patience in being with us 3 hours for this important discussion. The last word, of course, I'm going to give to the Director General soon. But let me just say that for me and for a number of colleagues, this has been very, very educative and very productive 3 hours that we've had. Let me do a quick summary of some of the key messages of the last session, and then let me see how I connect both first session and last session. Of course, in this last session, we see the key importance of investments in getting a lot of those ideas we had in the first session to really be actionable at the country and regional level. The sense of urgency was emphasized again in this last session, that we have to move fast, especially given the safe global carbon budget that is available for all of us to use, that we have to move fast in lowering emissions. To be able to do that and bring the investments in that we so require, there's a key message here about planning. We need good long-term plans. The good example from South Africa, Germany, and other places have been given. Philippines, we've heard as well. India, another good case we've heard today. And also Cyprus. Planning is crucial. Those plans have to be backed by simple, predictable sets of policies and laws where we come in as legislators. As Adam said, they want this sweet group of legal instruments approved by Parliament to give them confidence that there will be longevity over 20, 30 years, that these policies will be in place and the investors can come in and their investments will be safe. We also got a good indication from our colleague in Luxembourg, Sven, Honorable Sven, that, hey, why don't you set some good examples? Begin to put solar panels in the public buildings. I will say hooray to that. Let us ensure that, in fact, our government buildings begin to transition, and also some of the schools and hospitals. Some of that we can do ourselves as parliamentarians to push such legislation that will ensure now that there is a good market growing for renewable energy technologies. Citizens' pressure, I heard that twice from Honorable Sven as well. Citizens' pressure to see how institutional funds, in pension funds, insurance companies can also be directed to what he called responsible investments in green, resilient investments, and also in renewable energy to accelerate the transition. Pressure from citizens because it's their money, it's their pension funds, not necessarily pressure from the parliamentarians. But Honorable, also from Germany, Honorable Jutta Paulus, I liked your idea of citizen prosumers, where in fact in Germany now and some parts of Europe, there is a law that citizens can produce energy, sell it, and trade amongst themselves. You're making that now as a law for Europeans to use as a European law, where they can also domesticate and say to their governments, well, I'm able to produce and sell, so yes, I can be a prosumer. I think that is also a good idea that can spread. Honorable Mura also from Italy reminded us about the blue transition, biodiversity in the marines and the ecosystems along the marine as we use wind energy, but also some other sources of energy like tidal energy, and indicated that in fact, indeed, with their role now in COP26 together with UK, there could be an opportunity for legislators' voices to be heard even more. Of course, I pushed our own request that we would also like to send a message to the G20. Well, the first session was clear. We need renewable energy solutions to make sure health services work well, to also ensure agricultural production and jobs. We had some clear indicators there as to what needed to be done, how it can be done. But all of this is good from the public policy side. What we also need is private sector engagement. And I think that's where the second session kind of brought that to bear, that these ideas on the policy and analytical front are good, but we need the real actors, the private sector, to come in, and that public-private partnership and the link with us legislators to make that happen, to build the markets, to incentivize private sector to get involved and so on, and get the private and public capital working together, as in the case we heard now of India, the government also potentially budgeting money within their own national budgets to support private sector participation in the key ambitious targets set by their Prime Minister. We want to thank all of you for joining us. Of course, a lot of our ideas will be summarized by IRENA now for circulation. We want to thank you for participating. And if the DG is back, DG, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Kande. Thank you for your moderating role during these two sessions. And I wish to thank all the panelists, all the parliamentarians, all the participants to this interesting meeting. We will work not to meet next year. So we will meet next year, but we have to find a way to meet before the next year and try to understand how we can have to foster the role of the parliamentarians in the process to COP26. So I count on your leadership on this, Kande, and we will be in contact also with the association that has been with us today, trying to find a way to work together. So having the voice of the parliamentarians be part of the debates that will take place in the occasion of the COP26. So thank you again and see you soon, and trying to work together closely. IRENA is ready to support all your effort in your parliament. Don't forget this. We are with you. We are with all that are working for a cleaner and just energy system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll give ourselves a digital clap. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again next time. We hope deeply indeed we can have another